Good afternoon. I'm Mark Allen with Gaper.io, and I'm here today with Melissa Jurkoic from Addaptation. She's the Director of Operations. Good afternoon, Melissa. How are you doing?
Good. Good afternoon, Mark. Great. How are you?
Good. Yes, it's still early. It's still in the morning here in
Oh,
California, but I know it's afternoon there. So to start with, can you share a brief background of yourself and your work experience?
absolutely. So I have been a technologist for a long time. So I've been in the technology industry for well over 2 decades. I actually spent a considerable part of that working at a company called Amadeus, which is a global hospitality and travel software company. And I've worked across software engineering, product management, solution architecture, operational aspects of all of those. So I've kind of seen every different part of the business from R&D all the way up through sales and marketing. So really diverse, and just actually joined the adaptation team here in December of last year. So
Oh,
I'm a newbie, but also feeling like one of the originals now. It's like that's the startup way, I think.
right.
So 4 months is like 4 years, I guess, in
Well, lately,
startup
4 months feels like 4 years.
yeah. But it's been a blast. So I'm looking at how we are growing our customer success team there, and then operationally, just how are we going to scale the business across all different parts of what we're doing. So that's been my role, and I'm really excited to take all the experience I've had over the last couple decades and kind of culminate that into this role with Addaptation.
Well, great. And how long has Adaptation been in business?
So they were founded back in 2017.
Oh, okay. So
So
fairly recent.
yeah, so
Yeah.
not long, but in as startup years, that's probably whatever the multiplication of that is.
Yeah. So what has been your experience with remote employment, both as a remote employee and as a remote employer?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have that experience actually across all of my different roles too. In my product role, I was a product owner, and I managed or worked with, I should say, a product team and a Scrum team that was remote globally. So I had people that were in India, I had people that were in New Hampshire, I had people that were across the country, and we would all meet via Zoom like this or Teams. So I had experiences like that, and then most recently, of course, with everyone sort of under lockdown, our current company Addaptation, we actually went from moving into a beautiful space in Exeter, New Hampshire, a brand new space where we're finally all together at the same place, to having that ripped right out from underneath us, and we're all remote. So we're a fully remote company. This is week 3 of that.
Mm.
So my experience has been both from managing teams that way, as well as, being an employee. And I think at first it's a struggle for everyone.
Mhm.
It's just like it's kind of when you start a new job, it really feels like you're starting a new job.
Mm.
And where people struggle, I think, is just separating work and home.
Mhm.
It's super hard. And especially in where we are today with COVID-19, because we can't just go to a coffee shop. Like normally you could kind of create that separation for yourself, even as a remote employee, by leaving the house.
Mm.
And unless you want to use your hotspot in a car right now, you're kind of out of luck. Like there
Yeah.
is no leaving the house, because there's no other physical place, not even the library, where you can go right now.
Right.
So that's I've noticed created a lot of additional struggles for people. Like, how do I separate work and home? And then you have the whole homeschooling thing, of which I'm doing
Mhm.
right now as well. So that creates an even added layer. So I've seen it work really well. And I think it does take a particular type of discipline and attitude. And then technology is a huge help.
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't think we could do it without the technology. I think that would
Right.
be
No, I would agree with that. Just like this call right now. So,
exactly.
so what do you think is the future of remote employment, and what do you think needs to be done differently to make it even more effective?
Yeah, great questions again. In light of our current situation,
Mhm.
I think we are seeing right now the world embracing remote employment in a way that I don't think I ever would have imagined happening, 3 weeks ago. Really,
Mhm.
right? I could have, some of the people that even like our schools, like remote learning is just been embraced really
Mhm.
quickly. It's actually really impressive for me from an educator perspective, how quickly they've adopted like different technologies like Google Classroom and Zoom for remote learning sessions. So I think the future is, we're in it. I
Mhm.
think we've arrived, actually. And I think now that people have experienced it, I really believe it's going to become even more ingrained in what we do.
Mhm.
I think that once we're finally allowed to be social again, like physically social, um, people will certainly maybe value that time a little bit differently. But I think this has shown us really clearly that it's possible. It's also shown us that the technologies that support these things are incredibly important in our day-to-day life.
Mhm.
And so I believe it is the future. I think we're here. I think how we can improve it. Well, I think one thing, it's going to be on an infrastructure level, right? Like how much bandwidth has Zoom had to deal with since they've been giving away some free licenses for the purposes of education, et cetera. I know they've struggled, right?
Mhm.
I can tell you, I've been on Zoom calls where the bandwidth has been clearly not great, and it wasn't my Wi-Fi. So you
Mhm.
can tell there's some providers out there that are getting hit. I know that I have a friend that runs a fitness business, and
Mhm.
talk about remote learning from a fitness capacity. All of our gyms are closed, right?
Yes.
And that's impacting me personally.
Me too.
Yeah. And so it's like the discipline there, right? Back to the discipline side of things. Like, okay, no, I'm going to get up and work out. I'm going to find something online to do. My friend owns a studio just up the street in Stratham, New Hampshire. And so she hosts her website on Wix. And
Mhm.
so she went live on Wix to do some of her classes to people that have certain membership plans with her. And she was struggling the first week because everybody was doing that.
Mhm.
So another situation of, well, Wix probably didn't really anticipate that all these very small businesses that were running their websites on Wix for, whatever, $200 a year, were all of a sudden going to want to live stream their workouts multiple times a day, all
Yeah.
at the same time on their platform. So what we're going to have to do to support this going forward is we're going to have to beef up these things, right? These
Yeah.
providers that didn't anticipate this kind of workload, they're going to have to start to plan for that stuff.
Yeah.
So it works better, right? Because now all of a sudden we expect it, we want it. It's got to be there.
Well, it's interesting because I'm also a member of a gym, and when it first happened, they pretty quickly got to online classes.
Yeah.
But you could see, I mean, they were freezing, during, because there'd be 50, 60 people on. And I went on one yesterday. There were 80 people on and zero problems. It was just for 45 minutes. So I think
Yeah.
they've quickly adjusted, which is
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
yeah. So what is the story behind adaptation, and what's the journey been like? Well, and for you, the 4-month journey, for them in general.
but remember, it's more like 4 years, so it's quite a
Yeah.
journey already. um, so Addaptation, it's interesting. So it was founded, like I said, back in 2017. So really self-funded. So
Hmm.
bootstrapped themselves, which is really impressive, and profitable since day one, right? So like I mentioned, the founder, Sumner, he had quite a history deploying enterprise Salesforce implementations and seeing sort of the struggles that his customer were having and not being able to help them, really help them kind of get over the hurdles that they were confronting, because he was constrained by the Salesforce platform, of course, right? So he saw a path for sure to help people move past that. And
Hmm.
so that was really what Addaptation was built to do. It was built to provide a platform by which he could build a team of people to help the customers, like he had in the past, move past those hurdles. And so it's been an interesting journey, because again, like starting bootstrapped and working with customers that he had built over time, moving more from that consulting model into a SaaS business, which is where we are today, and what we can provide for products that can be endlessly configurable for you, but
Hmm.
also appropriate to a larger market. That's a tricky situation, right? So it requires a lot of like really deep thought around the strategy of who these customers are and the human experience, and how we can apply technology to solve that problem. And
Hmm.
one of the things I would say we've learned, and I can say we, even because the learning even in the last 4 months has been amazing, as we've evolved so much as a company. And even the last few weeks, as we've all been remote and trying to continue, looking at what our roadmap and our strategy is, it's really around, who these people are, what they're trying to achieve, and how we can apply technology or not, right? Like what is the best way to help people out there? It's also to tell them when maybe what you have or what anyone has isn't the right answer for them.
Hmm.
So we try to take that more advisory approach so that we really understand what that person's trying to do. So again, like we start from the team level, like who are the teams within your organization? We have worked really great in the past with innovation teams and operations teams. And then from there, really, we sort of have this land and expand model where we build relationships within the organization. And we've really made those teams successful within their organizations and true heroes, where they're like, the next problem that comes up, that someone comes to them, they're like, we've got to get you connected to Addaptation because this team just knows what's going on. So we really think of, what's the users trying to achieve and how can they do that? And if it's a process thing, then we look at how maybe they can implement different processes, right? Like sometimes technology isn't always the answer. And one of the things that I try to live by is technology is the easy part. It's trying to understand what problem you're trying to solve. That's the hard part. And so I'm really proud to say that Addaptation, we focus so much around, what are the problems we're trying to solve for those users, that it's not necessarily just about what's the great next shiny product we can build, really, right? We're really focused, again, around improving the experience for people just across the organization. So all the different teams and work streams that they have to make, them unique and valuable.
Wow, that's great. So how has that Addaptation incorporated the idea of remote within the company?
Well, we're all remote now.
Yeah. was it at first, or?
So we did have remote capabilities. In fact, we've used Zoom, ever since they've launched, and that was because their customers that they've started with, and even now, they're all over the world, right? So we're in multiple countries, and so we work with people, from Israel to New Jersey to Chicago to the west side of the country. So we use remote capabilities to hop on our calls with our customers, to walk them through solutions, to do demonstrations. So that's always been part of our DNA and what we've done. Where we've really, really embraced it, obviously, is in the last few weeks. We're now, we're having daily stand-ups with our individual teams. We've separated the company to provide more leadership around that, to lead teams virtually and make sure everyone knows where to get direction from, so that one person isn't getting overloaded since we're not physically all in the same location anymore. And then also, coming together as an entire team, obviously at the end of the week, is super important to stay connected and share sort of our wins and losses over the week and what we've learned and things that we can improve upon. And then also Slack has been huge for us from a remote communication perspective. So we always incorporated an element of working from home before this pandemic has hit us. But now, of course, it's absolutely necessary. So what I've noticed that's really changed in our culture is our ability to respond fast to each other and to our customers. And because we've turned into this electronic society just over the last few weeks, it's really important, right? Like similar to the, watching things on demand and live and expecting like that experience to not freeze. We also expect people to be responsive, right? I think as a society now, if I email you or I Slack you and you don't respond to me until the next day, it doesn't work. Like it's just not working right now. So I think our culture has turned into a much more responsive culture over the last few weeks.
Yeah, and since the pandemic, have you actually experienced any major roadblocks or challenges with the remote working?
I think only, again, back to different personalities and how we adjust to that being at home. I would say the biggest roadblock for all of us, any of us that have kids, that's been, boy, is that a struggle and a juggle. I just say, like, I'm working through it myself. I have a fourth grader here, so we're trying to figure it out. But that's been a big hurdle, and it impacts, honestly, not a lot of our workforce today. Of the 50 employees we do have children. There's only a handful of us, but it does impact everyone else, right? Because it might mean that I'm on a meeting and you might see my 9-year-old come up behind me because he has a question about something that he's doing, or maybe he wants to go, find a device and hide in a corner, and he's trying to, get my attention to see if I'm going to be able to help him, or he can just go like look at a screen instead. So that's impacting everyone too, because I think we're exhibiting a lot more patience, I should say, with each other, and grace around that. And then again, like just helping people structure their day in a way where they can feel like they can be productive and contribute. And that's one thing I would say is a huge piece, right? Like in the world where we're not physically all in the same place, it's making sure everyone feels their own contribution to what we're doing is really important.
Mhm.
It's like, that's the motivating factor. Like, hey, you guys did a great job today, and providing that focus at the beginning of the day and then wrapping it up, like literally at the end of the day with all the great work you did.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, no, I know. And it's interesting. It seems like depending upon how old the kids are, like if under 5 is a whole different challenge than,
Oh,
you know,
yes.
5 to about 13. And then over 13 is kind of like, they don't want to bother with you anyway.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
then you have people like me, my youngest is 30. So it's kind of like, I'm in their way, although they're in different parts of the country. So I don't actually, they're not living with me. So there are lots of companies like Gaper that help develop, build, and scale products, especially for startups. How important do you think this will be in the future, especially for startup companies and companies like yourself that are a few years old that are looking to hire smart people, quality people, and in a hurry?
Yeah, I think it is going to be a really valuable resource. So before, again, pre-pandemic, we were looking at different roles and kind of always keeping our eyes open, for people, like being open to conversations with people in the event that we would have a role to fill and we could have them in the back of our mind. What's challenging about that is sometimes you meet this amazing person, right? Like you might just be like, you have coffee with them and you're like, oh, like that woman, that guy's going in my Rolodex for when we need someone like this, right? Like you immediately profile them. You're like, oh yeah, not right now. We're not ready, right? Because of where we are, not right time, or we don't have the right operational process to just throw someone in right now. They're not going to be successful and we won't use them appropriately. So recognizing that, but then thinking, oh man, I wish we could snap them up today.
Yeah.
And you have that experience. And then when the time is right, or sometimes before that, you get the email like, hey, I'm not sure how you guys are doing. Just keeping the line of communication open. I just got offered a job at blah, blah, blah. And, just touching base with you. And then it's like, you're like, oh, just still not ready. You just wish them success. You're like, hey, good luck. I wish nothing but the best, stay in touch. But now you've lost them. Right.
Yeah.
So that just is, it's unfortunate for so many reasons, because you sort of saw it, like you saw where they would be a great fit, the culture, they had great experience, but you just weren't ready. So that's a reality, right? I've been here for 4 months. It's happened already twice, right? And
wow.
It's that fast. Well, because pre-pandemic, we weren't in an unemployment situation, right? So it was not an employer's market. It was definitely an employee's market. So that clearly is going to shift and has shifted. But at the time, so you get a great candidate, but at the same time, I'm not going to carelessly hire you now just because I really feel like at some point this would be an incredible partnership for us, because it's just not the right time. So that all being said, timing is everything. So I can see like what Gaper does and those types of resources being really valuable for startups, because again, timing is everything. So I might not be ready today, but boy, when I'm ready, I need you like 2 days ago. So that creates this pit of contention where you're like, do I hire them now, even though we're not operationally ready? And don't want to do that. You don't want to spend budget when you don't need to.
Especially startups.
Yeah, right. So it's always this, like, again, back to like the struggle and the juggle. So these types of resources that you guys provide, I think, that's where it's like the timing is so critical and finding the right resource is so critical. If you guys provide an answer where those two things, come together and really intersect, and then, that's a huge asset for companies that are in that like growth phase, because once they get there, it's like already too late. They needed the team of at least like 5 more people on the back end, like customer success. It's like, amazing. Let's grow sales right now. That's where we're focused. Very important and exactly right where we should be strategically. But if we, tenfold our customers, we got to have a success team that can be responsive and provide the best experience, because we don't want to churn on the other side of that. So again, it's this balancing act where, well, we can't invest in success before we have the customers, like a chicken egg thing. So I'm really interested in what that looks like for us in the future too, because I see that coming as we, spending all this great work at home time, thinking strategically around the growth of our company. And growth means, strategically growing our customer base, but also our company. Like, how are we going to support that? So I think it's hugely valuable.
Scaling is an interesting dilemma, especially in these times. So
absolutely.
So, well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been great. And I wish you all the luck in the world at Adaptation after your 4 years / 4 months.
Thank you very much, Mark. This was great.
Thanks. Have a great day.
Thanks, you too.
Bye.